The open sea, a symbol of freedom. No borders, no rules. But today, that freedom is in peril. A Russian oil tanker, the Marinera, is heading for Europe. It's no ordinary ship. This tanker is at the center of a global crisis. US forces are ready to intercept it. They've tracked it across the Atlantic. Why? Because this ship is carrying more than just oil. It's carrying tension, power, politics. Just weeks ago, President Trump ordered a blockade of oil tankers leaving Venezuela. The US said they're enforcing sanctions. Venezuela called it theft. And now, the Marinera is caught in the middle of that storm. This is more than a shipping route. This is about control, about power, and about the future of global order. Will America seize the tanker, or will Russia stand its ground? In the next few minutes, we'll break it down. The causes, the mechanisms, and the consequences of what happens next. To understand what's happening, we need to look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about one tanker. It's about global power struggles, trade routes, and the future of energy. The US has long had a policy of enforcing sanctions on countries it considers rogue states. Venezuela, under Nicolas Maduro, has been one of the most affected. For years, it's been shipping oil, a vital resource, despite the US pressure. But the Marinera brings this issue into a new phase. What's changed? The US is no longer simply targeting Venezuelan oil. Now, it's confronting Russia, a superpower with its own global agenda. Russia's involvement changes everything. The US has always had the military power to disrupt oil trade. But when a country like Russia steps in, things get much more complicated. The Marinera may be a single ship, but it represents a much larger battle. A battle for influence, a battle for control of the seas. This confrontation is bigger than oil. It's about who will define the rules of the future. The roots of this crisis go deep. It's not just about today's politics. It's about decades of global dynamics, shifting alliances, and changing power structures. For years, Venezuela has been a thorn in the side of US foreign policy. Under Hugo Chavez and later Nicolas Maduro, the country used its vast oil reserves to challenge American influence. But it wasn't just Venezuela. It was a larger wave of anti-US sentiment across Latin America, fueled by the rise of populist leaders, many backed by Russia and China. Russia's involvement in Venezuela is part of a broader strategy. It's not just about oil. It's about countering US dominance in the Western Hemisphere. For Russia, Venezuela is a foothold, a place to challenge the US without direct confrontation. But as the US increases its pressure, Russia is digging in its heels. This is no longer just an economic conflict. It's a geopolitical battle. This fight over the Marinera is the latest chapter in a long history of competition for control of global resources. A battle over who will decide how the world's energy flows. Just last month, the Marinera was nearly seized by US forces in the Caribbean. The US Coast Guard had a warrant, a plan, and a clear mission: seize the vessel for violating sanctions by carrying Iranian oil. But in a dramatic turn of events, the ship changed course. It reflagged from Guyana to Russia. And just like that, it became more than a mere shipping vessel. It became a symbol of defiance. What followed was a standoff. The US didn't back down, but neither did Russia. For both countries, this wasn't just about oil anymore. It was about prestige, power, control. Russia reacted with outrage. They called the US move theft and threatened retaliation for the US. This was a direct challenge to their sanctions regime, a line they could not afford to let slip. This was the first spark, a signal that this conflict was escalating. But the real question remains: what happens next? Just last month, the Marinera was nearly seized by US forces in the Caribbean. The US Coast Guard had a warrant, a plan, and a clear mission: seize the vessel for violating sanctions, for carrying Iranian oil. But then In a dramatic turn, the ship changed course. It reflagged from Guyana to Russia. And just like that, it became more than a shipping vessel. It became a symbol of defiance. What followed was a standoff. The US didn't back down, but neither did Russia. For both countries, this wasn't just about oil anymore. It was about prestige, power, control. Russia reacted with outrage. They called the US move theft, and they threatened retaliation. For the US, this was a direct challenge to their sanctions regime, a line they could not afford to let slip. This was the first spark, a signal that this conflict was escalating. But the real question remains, what happens next? The story of the Marinera isn't just about a single ship. It's about a global system, a system where power, politics, and economics are intertwined. And at the heart of this system is the concept of sanctions. Sanctions are a tool, a weapon, used by powerful nations to control behavior. For the US, sanctions are a way to impose its will. They've used them for decades against Iran, against North Korea, and now against Venezuela. But sanctions only work if they are enforced. And that's where the Marinera comes in. This ship is more than just a piece of cargo. It's a message to Venezuela, to Russia, and to the world. When the Marinera reflagged from Guyana to Russia, it sent a clear signal. It showed that Russia is willing to challenge US sanctions. It also showed that Venezuela's oil trade will continue no matter what. But this challenge comes with consequences. Sanctions are only effective if countries respect them. And if Russia is willing to defy the US, what does that mean for global order? As the Marinera continues its journey across the Atlantic, things are heating up. US military assets have arrived in the UK, a clear signal that the US is ready to escalate. The presence of military transport planes and helicopters is not a coincidence. The situation is tense. The Marinera is close to European waters, but the distance and weather conditions make boarding difficult. If the US were to act, it would need support. The UK would have to be informed, but the UK Ministry of Defense, they won't comment on military operations by other nations. Russia, on the other hand, is watching closely. They've already made it clear that they're monitoring the situation. They've warned the US to stop interfering. They've accused the US of exaggerating the importance of this tanker. And still, the Marinera sails on, its future uncertain. The US could attempt another interception, but it's unclear what will happen if they do. What's next in this escalating game? The world is holding its breath. What does all this mean for you? For the everyday person caught in the middle of this geopolitical struggle, when nations clash over oil, it's not just governments that suffer, it's the people. For Venezuela, this means a worsening crisis. With oil exports blocked, the country faces even deeper economic hardship. For the people of Russia, the situation is no less intense. They face the consequences of rising tensions with the West. The world watches as their government pushes back against American influence. And for those in Europe, the effects are already starting to show. Rising oil prices. An energy crisis, this standoff affects everyone. This isn't just about politics or sanctions. It's about lives, people like you and me. So ask yourself, what's the future of global cooperation when this crisis escalates? This standoff isn't just confined to one region. It's a global issue. As the Marinera sails closer to Europe, the world is watching. The stakes have never been higher. The US and Russia are not just two countries. They represent two competing visions of global order. One led by Washington, the other by Moscow. And what happens next could reshape geopolitics for years to come. If the US intercepts the Marinera, Russia will retaliate. That much is certain. But the real question is, how far will both sides go? This situation isn't just about oil. It's about control of trade routes, control of global influence and control of the future for the countries in Europe, the impact is already being felt. Rising tensions mean rising energy prices. The world's economy is watching and waiting. The ripple effects are real. The global system is fragile. And this crisis is a reminder of just how interconnected we all are. So, what happens next? Where does this crisis lead? Let's explore 3 possible futures. A good one, a middle one, and a bad one. The best case. In this scenario, diplomacy prevails. The US and Russia reach an agreement. The tanker is allowed to pass through international waters, and tensions begin to ease. Both sides make compromises. Venezuela's oil trade continues, but the world breathes easier. The middle ground, this one is less optimistic. A standoff continues for months. The Marinera remains in limbo. Neither side is willing to back down, but neither wants full-scale confrontation. This scenario leads to economic uncertainty. Energy prices rise, diplomatic channels stay open, but no real resolution is reached. The worst case scenario is a military confrontation. The US intercepts the Marinera, Russia retaliates, and suddenly we're looking at a much larger crisis. The world shifts from tension to conflict, and a new Cold War could emerge. In the end, the Marinera is more than just a ship. It's a symbol of something much bigger. It's a symbol of the power struggles that define our world, of the systems we depend on, and the fragile piece that holds them together. What happens with this tanker will echo far beyond the North Atlantic. It will set the stage for how nations engage with each other in the coming years. But this isn't just about governments and sanctions. This is about you, about how global decisions affect your life. So, what can we do? We need to stay informed. We need to pay attention to the shifts in power, because what happens next is a story we all share. And the choices we make now will shape the world of tomorrow.